harmony of God. In the harmony that is your true nature, there is no agreements with the outside world. There are agreements with God. But when you make agreements with the outside world, you become its prisoner rather than the ruler of your kingdom. When you compromise or make agreements with the outside world, you're making an agreement with forms that move with dust and move with clouds. They don't really exist. And yet you can put your faith in them of how they the outcome, the outcome being what you're putting your faith in, and that you believe that the outcome can be good or bad according to what you think is good or bad. I always think about I think it's in the Chinese tradition that burping at the table is a sign of great satisfaction and a compliment to the person who's made the meal. And then in Western civilization, it's rude. So, is there a right or wrong? No, it's a seduction either way. If you believe that you're aligning with not being rude by not burping, the only thing that has to be remembered is that it's totally made up. It has no value one way or the other, and yet to put your attention to it is to worship false gods. Either direction. If you are a good burper and you happen to be Asian and you live in an Asian country, you may spend all your time practicing on your burping so that you're seen as a good guest as opposed to a bad guest. And if you're in a Western civilization, you practice keeping your mouth shut so you don't burp. And yet, you think that it's better if somebody doesn't burp than if somebody does burp. It's all made up. You have made up the idea that there is good or bad with anything, and it becomes your God in that moment, whatever it happens to be. Get a pair of socks on sale, and you're pleased with yourself because you made a good bargain. But then you step back and realize I was pleased with myself for making something up about value and scarcity. It's all made up. To be in a state of happiness, to be content, to be at peace, is to accept that this is within you. It has nothing to do with what seems to be occurring on the outside. Imagine a cartoon of someone going happy, sad, happy, sad, happy, sad, happy, sad, happy, sad, good outcome, bad outcome, good outcome, bad outcome, good outcome, bad outcome. Because that's how much the world can be in your mind and influencing your sanity. And you're not than recognizing sanity for what it is. Buying houses sometimes has that insane effect. You buy a house at a certain price, and then you get very happy when the value of the house goes up, except that if you sell that house at an inflated price, then you will have to buy another house and it will also be at an inflated price. It's all smoke and mirrors. There is no good, there is no bad. It's where are you supposed to live? What is it that, where is God calling you? What job is it that God is calling you to? And everywhere you go, to be at peace, to be in the state of harmony, no matter what the situation seems to be. It's always just harmony. How painful is it to work in a job where there are many beloveds working in the same industry? And every day there's tension for who's going to get fired, who's not going to get fired, who's going to get an advancement, who's going to get a raise. Whatever the situation is of comparisons, and the belief that because there are others there, you will be with less, because this is the belief in scarcity. And the belief in scarcity is always it's not just about money. It's about the belief that there is not enough and that there are too many beloveds for the amount of value that there is in the world. There's not enough money, there's not enough water, not enough land. It doesn't matter what it is that you put your attention to, it's made up. And that is where the harmony of God continues to call, to realize that it is all within your own mind that sees either accomplishment or neutrality or blessings with everyone or scarcity or this is a good outcome and this isn't a good outcome. How can anyone be at peace and in harmony when there seems to be a contingency on the way things look and how they seem to be? But how they look to you comes from your own perception. What if everybody had the same perception in the world? That would be the ex- expansion of insanity that would actually probably make things easier in the long run to be able to see what's in the way. What if everyone admired exactly one face in the world? There was like one beauty that everybody agreed on, and everybody tried to be that and look like that. That's the insanity. As if the outside appearance indicates who you are or what you are, and it does not at all. It is your heart, it is your intention, it is your compassion, forgiveness, gentleness, and open mindedness and honesty. And those don't have a face, those don't have a good or bad. It's the absence of fear, the absence of hatred, which includes suspicions, doubts, greed, all different elements of fear, but it's all just fear. That profound teaching, I think it's a Buddhist teaching, where the farmer is working on his land and his neighbor says, "Oh, did you hear the army's coming to get all the men, young men, to be in the army? Aren't you terribly worried about your son? This could be very bad." And the farmer says, "It's neither good or bad. It is what is." And then his son breaks his leg and he can't be taken by the army. And the neighbor says, "Oh, well, that was a good thing." No, it's neither good nor bad. It just is what it is. And that farmer then is the happy farmer that is not attached and understands that love is perfect and love is within, and nothing outside changes anything of your beingness. And it also has no value to change your moods and your behaviors and your reactions. To stay in a state of love is to stay at peace in your heart and have no opinions. And how can you have no opinions if you think everything is good and bad and right and wrong? It's all opinions. And that's where the suffering is. So we come home and rest that there is no good or bad, no right and wrong, just love, just peace, just harmony, just acceptance and trust in the divine. If you're trusting in the outside world to be right or wrong, it leaves you in a place of believing that you're alone, that you're on your own, and you never are, not in the truth. In the truth, you rest in God, in the ease and the peace of truth. Mother, oh my mother, release me from this pain. Mother, oh my mother, release me from this pain. This pain has been my life. Only you can set me free. Your love can set me free. Mother, oh my mother, release me from this pain. Mother, oh my mother, release me from this pain. I want to be with you. I want to know your love. Please help me, my mother, to feel your love. I want to know your love. I want to know your love. I want to feel your love. I want to live in that love. And I cannot bring the good and the bad, the right and the wrong with me. It all disappears and you rest in the truth of love. The world is a game. It's a game of good and bad and right and wrong. It's a game. And when you believe in the game, it gets very frightening. It would be as if you get a phone call or you read in the newspaper that all the money that has been handed out in the last year is counterfeit, and you don't have that. What does that mean? Is that a curse? Is that bad? No. It's always a learning. It's always there for freedom, to learn the truth of freedom, and to no longer be imprisoned by the mind that thinks it knows what's good and bad and right and wrong. The freedom to accept everything as God's light, perfect and whole. The birds' favorite songs you do not hear, for their most flamboyant music takes place when their wings are stretched above the trees, and they are smoking the opium of pure freedom. It's healthy for the prisoner to have faith that one day he will again move about wherever he wants, feel the wondrous grit of life less structured, find all wounds, debts stamped, canceled, and paid. I once asked a bird, "How is it that you fly in this gravity of darkness?" And the bird responded, "Love lifts me." It's no different for the bird than it is for every beloved. How is it that you fly? Love lifts you. Or you're on your own, whichever you choose. But eventually, the on your own part is recognized as just a place of fear, a place of reaction that thinks it knows. But love keeps calling to come home, truly come home. Resist your temptation to lie by speaking of separation from God. Otherwise, we might have to medicate you. In the ocean, a lot goes on beneath your eyes. Listen, they have clinics there too for the insane who persist in saying things like, "I am independent from the sea. God is not always around," gently pressing against my soul. We may have to medicate you. That is the angels of the light saying, "Come on, stop playing around with the good and the bad, the right and the wrong, and come home. Come home to rest." Deceive yourself no longer that you are helpless in the face of your belief that something bad or good happens to you. Deceive yourself no longer. That is what the spiritual journey is no longer deceiving yourself. It's changing your mind about your mind, for sure, and recognizing how the deception takes over. how it captivates you. And then forgive yourself again and again and again and again until it no longer shows up, till your mind no longer is drawn to the addiction of the deception. I wrote something quite a while ago, and I was realizing it was perfect for now. The belief in conflict must be resolved. It cannot be evaded, set aside, denied, disguised, seen somewhere else, called by another name, or hidden by deceit of any kind if it is to be healed. It must be resolved. But it has to be first recognized for what it is. If you are not at peace, if you are not moving with a light heart and a clear mind, then something is not resolved. And the worry or the deceit is running the show. It must be seen exactly as it is, and with it, that you see the purpose that the mind has given to it. When you want to see what purpose you've given to it, that's when you're so close to healing, because you're participating. You're you're in a place of recognizing, oh, this is what I want, and I'm putting my attention to what I truly want. And I don't want to fool myself anymore about good and bad and right and wrong, because I'm fooling myself. And I want to love myself with truth. I want to completely imbibe the wine of truth. I want to swim in the sea of truth, of reality. Why would I want something different? The lies of the ego have convinced that it's a trade off, that to choose God's love is not that different than to choose what's in the world. They're pretty similar to the ego's authority. If you're in the world and you're daydreaming about winning the lottery, that's a pretty obvious game. But if you're also in the world and thinking that there is a good outcome and a bad outcome according to the form, that's also the same thing as fantasizing about the lottery. It's all made up. Will God leave you without is the question. Would God leave you without? No. But what is without? What's the meaning? And how does that navigate? How do you navigate that in your life to be at peace and let the outside movement move? It must be seen exactly as what it is and with the purpose that the mind gave it, for only then are its defenses lifted and the truth can shine upon it as it disappears. It's all within. It must be seen exactly as it is. When when you are focused on divine teachings, whether they're written or whether they're remembered within, or whether they come through in a prayer. But divine teachings are a correction, always a correction. Even if the correction is just a couple of inches that it's moving something just ever so slightly, but it's the medicine that is taking you in its most helpful direction, even if it's just a little shove. But make no mistake that if you take in every teaching as a correction, you begin to have a new relationship with every teaching, because you can then recognize that you want correction. You are actually taking in the teaching because you want correction, because you have come to enough sanity of your awareness that you no longer want to keep playing the same old game of scarcity, of the belief that the form has value and has even a magical quality to it that somehow either saves you or condemns you. But as soon as you think you're saved by something on the outside being good, well, the next morning the same illusion can go the other direction and present you with something that you consider to be bad. It's all just a roller coaster ride. And God is calling you to come home to peace, come home to a smoothness like like a lake or in the middle of the ocean where it's totally smooth and it turns like glass, because it's always just harmony. And you don't have to worry about being caught in the hurricane or the flood or the freezing rain or whatever the outside seems to provide. It doesn't mean anything. You are one with all harmony. The light of love and truth can shine away all beliefs in conflict and doubt if you are willing to seek the eternal truth. Let that be everything. It's so easy. I only want the truth. I don't want anything else. I don't want to play the game of winning the lottery while somebody else doesn't. I don't want to play the game of protecting my world or making sure that it's going in the direction that I want it to go instead of turning it over to God. And having enough trust to realize that God's will for you is always peace and joy. So what would you focus on from the world that you would rather have instead of peace and joy? And if you can choose something in the world rather than the peace of joy of God, that means that you have never experienced the peace and the joy of God. Because no one in their right mind would take something from the world that is temporary and made up for the peace and joy of eternal life, where no disharmony finds you. I also wrote down a question. If nobody has done anything, and if guilt and wrongdoing are made up by the ego, is there any reason to apologize when you've done nothing? Nothing's happened. The only purpose of apology is an acknowledgement that you were mistaken, and the humility that it takes to speak that outwardly. It doesn't it doesn't mean that you're saying you're sorry because you did something wrong. No, it's just a new way of seeing everything. Sorry can be sometimes used by someone who is ready to break open their heart and needs that dose of humility to be able to open their heart. But it doesn't mean that they are wrong or bad or that they have done anything. They're just remembering love. There is nothing ever to have guilt with. Guilt is not an attribute of the divine. It is not a pusher that makes you toe the line better. Guilt is made it's completely made up within you. It's not coming from anywhere else. It's an agreement that you have that guilt somehow has truth in it, as if you are the judge and the jury that have decided that you have to be guilty. And to realize that guilt only wants to keep you exactly where you are, because every element of guilt is a game of ideas. The guilt says, look what I did or look what I didn't do. And I am the decider that what I did do or I didn't do is good or bad because I'm the one who knows. Except that every time someone feels guilty and believes in it, it holds you prisoner. It holds you in a prison that says, I don't have to change. I can stay here in guilt and live what I think I know. While love is saying, let go. There is no guilt. You're making it up. And what is it for? Because it's familiar, for sure, for sure. Especially when guilt gives you the permission to prove that you are damaged or wounded, that you are a victim of the world, and that guilt is part of that package. But there's nothing, again, to be guilty about, and there is nothing in this world that changes the truth of who you are. The outside is made up and is only a perception from your mind. Comparisons is another way of saying we're different and some have more and some have less. What else would you be comparing? What is there to compare? Age, education, experience, personality? None of that has any meaning. Your heart, your light is what is waiting to come forward and be itself. instead of an identity. Is there a comparison? No. You're called to be somewhere, you be there. If you're called not to be somewhere, you don't be there. There's no right or wrong, there's no good and bad. There's just trust in God. God is the orchestrator, the orchestra leader, and you don't play your instrument without watching the orchestration because you're not doing the orchestrating. Imagine that everybody in an orchestra would stand up and say, "Oh, I have a different idea. Let's do it this way. No, let's do it this way. No, let's do it this way." Instead of trusting the orchestration. It is humbling just in and of itself. It's humbling because the I know is so adamantly wanting to be in charge. And yet heaven is in following. It's in letting go of all thoughts of right and wrong and good and bad. And I'm here only to be truly helpful. I am here to represent love that sent me. Represent the love that sent me. Represent the divine spirit of love as as an extension of that love, but no longer attached to identity or value in the world. Your value is so incredible because there's no other words. Your value is the value of God. Your value is the intrinsic truth of creation for all eternity. When you see a painting that someone has painted that is renowned for their work, Michelangelo, or that that type of artistry, and you look at his paintings, what is that for? That is only for a hint of how the mightiness and the brilliance of God encompasses all creation. And all you have to do is get on the boat and let the boat follow the river and trust in that, to trust and be on the river in the boat and at peace and to be content because you're starting to trust that when you put yourself into the hands of God and let that unfold, it's always the deep learning that you were praying for. Always. The major element of resistance and fear is I don't like the way this looks and I don't like the way this feels. I have an opinion already, and my opinion says I don't like this. I have another idea of what's right and what's wrong. Well, that old idea, that belief that you don't like this or don't like that, is what's holding you hostage to the past. Everybody had their agreements when you were growing up. Everybody in the past life had their agreements. And you keep clinging to those because You believe that's your way to safety. But every time you've let go and trusted, you had a deep healing and a deep awareness of truth. And every time you come close to surrendering, you come that close to that same love and harmony that is waiting for you. And it is always there. I said the other day that when I was called to seclusion, the major element that I saw to begin with was, oh, I didn't need anybody else around me to be insane. I could be completely in seclusion and still drive myself completely crazy because every thought that I had was a battle. Every thought that I had was worried about what somebody else was thinking, what somebody else was doing, what some situation in the world was about, what things looked like, what kind of weather it was. It didn't matter. I had it all in my mind, and that was a major shift in healing of that realization that, oh, I didn't need anybody around me to be crazy. I was just crazy, just all by myself, all with my own mind, making up everything, constantly thinking that I knew something, and would be seduced by the activity of the mind and the trance that I would go into. And then I could think about everybody else and what I thought of them. I could say, "Oh, that's a good personality there. This one's not so great. This one needs improvement, whatever." And it was all the insanity of my mind. I didn't know anything about anybody at all because I thought I knew something about them. And I didn't know a thing. How could I? I couldn't see their spirit, not yet. I was focused on their outside activity and their outside appearance. And yet, the divine said, "Come on, come into the spirit and see the perfection of each beloved. Fall in love with everybody, adore everybody, worship everybody and everything, and have no personal opinions about anything. Just love." Not their hairdos, not their clothes, not their shoes, not their cars, not their education, not their personality. No, deeper. The essence of their being, their reflection of God. And then when you look in the mirror, that you see the same reflection and you have no other opinion about what you think you're looking at because you have to go beyond what you think you see and meet the spirit that is within, that's waiting to be recognized, and that has no agenda. This is what the ego would do. The ego would spend time getting to know spiritual stuff, and then take that fantasy of, oh, now I can go tell everybody that I met a divine being, or I can talk about how how much I've opened my heart and talk about it. And no, just accepting God's perfection and resting in that perfection. It's one of the elements of healing that is hard. It's a hard understanding sometimes when you have an awareness that comes over you, and it's a healing, and you see things very differently, and you can recognize that, oh, this is transformation of some kind, because I'm letting go of my opinion, and I'm seeing through peace in this moment. But at the same time, there is a temptation to want to show and tell. Let me tell you what happened to me. It was so exciting. No, it's in the quiet, resting in the heart of love, that the transformation has an opportunity to incubate and become its true essence. And you meet it, and you have a new communion with an element within, but you just hold it sacredly, because as soon as you want to show and tell, you've made it something of the world. If it's shared, it's shared out of a healing. It's shared because the Holy Spirit says it's time to use that as a perfect teaching that you learned from, and then you share it. But you wait always for the Holy Spirit's of opening that door, because or else it becomes the property of the ego, a show and tell property. And then you find yourself not remembering the profoundness of the healing that you received, because it's been diluted by the ego, made to be of the world. No good, no bad, no right, no wrong. It's all the simplicity of love, loving without conditions, and being aware of every hurdle that the ego puts out that wants your attention. And you just keep saying, no, I'm listening to the divine. I'm listening to the truth of love, and I don't want anything else. I'm not interested in the side roads. I want to learn to love and feel the longing of wanting to learn to love. There is only love. There is only harmony and peace and gentleness. And if you're not at peace in the moment, when you ask yourself, am I at peace? That in itself is your loving offering to yourself. Just asking the question is loving, because you are offering to yourself that you want to return to peace, that you want to return to love. And that is self love. And when you ignore the ego and don't allow the good or the bad, the right and the wrong to have value, because it doesn't, when that occurs, that's loving to yourself as well. That's learning to love yourself by refusing the lies of the ego that only love is real. And there is medicine for the lies, the medicine of harmony, the medicine of I don't know, the medicine of show me the way. Mother, oh my mother, I want to be with you. I want to feel your love. Please help me. Please help me.